Well, Mary, I'm Jaden Deckert. I'm the urban conservationist here with Burleigh County Soil. So what I do is I assist with a lot of education outreach in many different ways. We do a variety of different things, whether it is plantings in the garden or even pollinator plantings using pollinator plugs, and just a lot of technical assistance, helping different producers with things like that. When they have questions, they go ahead and give us a call. And then with the garden, the same too, different mulches, no-till. Seth had talked to you about using the 5 soil health principles. So that is something that is very scalable, and we utilize that in every shape here at Menoken Farm, in the gardens, high tunnel, all of it.
Well, what research goes on here in this high tunnel?
Well, a lot of demonstration. We do some research though. One of the specific tests that we've been doing is some nutrient density testing. So different things like that. Obviously, if you've ever went to the store and eaten carrots, for example, are a good one. Some will be really woody and others will be sweet. Well, the reasons for that is the nutrient density. So we're kind of doing the testing and seeing what makes a difference. Is regenerative better than conventionally grown vegetables? So we're just kind of starting that process and doing a lot of that testing.
What do you mean by regenerative?
So regenerative is utilizing the 5 soil health principles in the garden. So instead of going ahead and tilling and using lots of fertilizers and fungicides, insecticides, things like that, we're trying to work with nature. So that's what regenerative means.
What kind of fertilizer do you use here on these plants?
So we don't use any commercial fertilizer, but we use different organic fertilizers. Some good examples of that would be compost is one that we utilize. We'll use alfalfa pellets. And then one new this year we're trying is actually sheep's wool. So it's got 9% nitrogen from all the studies that I've found on it. But it not only acts as a fertilizer, it acts as food for the microbes.
When the microbes are breaking that down, does that tie up the nutrients and hurt the plants?
So you definitely can have those issues, especially if you use a mulch like straw, where that's very high in carbon. That you can see some issues like that if you have a high carbon mulch. That will tie up some of your nitrogen content, but other applications won't. Like the wool will not, because it has some of its own nitrogen in it, so it doesn't need access that it needs to draw from the ground.
How do you prepare the soil here in the high tunnel?
So one of the things that makes us different from other gardeners is we use the 5 soil health principles, so minimize disturbance, so we don't till at all. So typically we'll utilize cover crops to our advantage. So what that is we'll typically plant cover crops the year before, let them grow, and then depending on what species they are, they'll either frost kill, or if it's a biennial, they'll go into the next year. But that root system basically tills the soil for us and creates the channels for the water. So then in the spring of the year, we'll go ahead and clip that cover crop residue down. We'll create our rows like you typically would. Depending on if the residue is really thin, we'll take a scissors too and cut it as well. And we'll plant right into it, and it's a very good mulch right away, and it's actually known as what's called green manure.
So then, do you use other mulch too?
Yep, absolutely we do. Especially in the outdoor garden, we utilize several different types of mulches. We'll use weed barrier fabric. I really like that one to a point. It's great for multiple year uses, but the problem is it's a little extra work to clean it up, things like that. Another type of mulch that we utilize, we'll use cardboard and contractor's paper. It comes in the nice 4-foot rolls, and we'll roll that out. We really like that because it's a carbon source, so carbon feeds our system, so it'll actually break down as the year progresses, and then by the time it breaks down, we'll go ahead and seed our cover crops into the fall. That works great. Another mulch that we utilize is actually alfalfa. So we use this a lot in our potatoes. We actually use no-dig potatoes. So it's a very simple process that doesn't include any tillage whatsoever. We'll place the potato right on top of the soil, we'll cover it in 6 to 8 inches of alfalfa, and the potatoes will sprout right through that. And the best part is you don't have to hurt your back in the fall when it goes to harvest. You just grab the plant, and a lot of the tubers come right with the root system. So it's really a great way to grow potatoes.
So do you have to change out the soil every so many years that's in your beds in order to keep disease from building up?
So actually we haven't changed out the soil. The only time it's ever been changed out is we brought in some compost that was contaminated with some herbicide. But typically for disease purposes, no. We have such a good rotation, and it's diverse enough to where we really don't have any disease issues whatsoever. that harbors into the soil. But the key is keeping a diverse mix of different plants. A frame of flowers is good, and utilizing cover crops just to break up those cycles enough before you go back into it with your next rotation.
And what do you use for compost?
So we actually make our own compost here at Menoken Farm. We have several different ingredients, some of which include, we'll use alfalfa, old hay, manure. We actually would get some dairy manure from a local dairy. We try to utilize all locally sourced products, maybe some of the garden residue if we're utilizing that, but we try to leave as much as we can where it sits over winter. But that's essentially what's in our mix of our compost.
What kind of plants do you grow?
So for that, I'll actually turn that over to my associate, Jenny. She is a brain when it comes to everything we grow in the greenhouse.
Hi, I'm Jenny Melhoff. I'm a gardener here out at the farm. I do the planting inside the high tunnel and the outdoor garden, and I help with whatever projects they need help with.
What all do you grow here?
In the high tunnel, we have beets, we have onions, we have leeks, lettuces, spinach, tomatoes, peppers, parsnips, a little bit of everything.
Well, it looks like you have a lot of plants planted together. Is that intentional?
Yes, we do companion planting here at the farm. I have this book, it's called Carrots Love Tomatoes, and it tells you all about how to plant or what to plant together, plants that like each other, plants that don't like each other, but plants that you can grow together that benefit both plants.
So do you do the companion planting both in here and also outside too?
Yes, we do them in both places. We use a lot of herbs for companions because they do a lot for plants. Like we have a tomato bed in here that has basil, which will improve the growth and flavor of your tomatoes, as well as lemon balm does the same thing for tomatoes. And then in our peppers, we have basil planted there as well, and they also improve the growth and flavor of the peppers. We planted radishes with our lettuce, and the lettuce makes the radishes more succulent and tender. We have planted in the past, not this year, but chamomile with onions, and chamomile again improves the growth and flavor of onions. So like in this bed where I'm standing here, I had planted radish with the parsnips, and I used the radish for the row marker because the parsnips come up so slowly. We have carrots and chives improve the growth and flavor of carrots, and plus they keep away the carrot fly. We have leeks and onions planted together because they're in the same family, and sometimes they don't grow well together, but in that particular family they do. And so they kind of keep away onion flies. So some of the herbs sometimes act as a trap crop where they keep the pests away from the other plants so that they can do better. We also have a bed of flowers in here, different kinds of flowers like zinnias and balsam, alyssum, marigolds, that they bring in beneficial insects like bees and butterflies. We also let the milkweed come in here too because it brings in more butterflies. We have cover crops in here too as well. We like to rotate within the high tunnel. It's a 4-year rotation. We start with like our leaf-bearing crops like lettuce because they need a lot of nitrogen. You would follow that with a fruit-bearing crop, which would be like cucumbers, tomatoes, because they don't need as much nitrogen. And then you follow that with like a root crop, which would be onions or beets because they use very little nitrogen. And then the 4th year, then you bring your legumes in. And it's very hard to grow legumes in a high tunnel. I think it's too warm. And so that's why we have the cover crop. It brings in, you know, we can grow some peas, we can grow some soybeans and some cowpea. So that adds our legume to the rotation, and then it starts all over again.
So what are some of the natural insect control plants that you use?
Well, chives is one that keeps the bugs away. Radish is another one that keeps a trap crop. This oregano, it's got some hairs on it that traps pests as well. And sometimes the smell will, you know, deter plants. So like we have some lemongrass that's planted with our flowers, and they benefit flowers because they keep some of the pests away, like the aphids and mealybugs and that type of things, away from the other plants.
So what happens to the produce that is grown here?
All the produce is donated to the Soup Cafe in Bismarck. They feed people who are down on their luck and homeless. They serve meals every day. And so everything gets donated from the High Tunnel and the outdoor garden. They're very appreciative. It's really a good thing. And that kind of determines what we grow in here too, is because they let me know, like, they like onions for all the stews and soup they make, and tomatoes and cucumbers, and we bring our sweet corn in there, all our potatoes. And the nice thing about there is that they get a lot from other gardeners as well, and they can and they dehydrate and they do whatever they can to use as much of the produce they're given so nothing goes to waste.